Preston Bell Charles III. I tell you, I barely wanted to start the show. I'm backstage listening. Thank you, Preston. We're going to hear more about Preston later and more from him all night long. My name is David Levy, and I would like to welcome you personally to the second evening of our 13th season of True Theater. We come to you tonight from the beautiful downtown Cincinnati Memorial Hall. We want to thank all the staff, the administration, and the volunteers here for not only doing their jobs as excellently as they do, but making us feel welcome and like family, which may also be part of their job, but they do a great job at it. So thanks very much to everybody here at Memorial Hall. We also want to thank our sponsor for tonight, Mest Comics. Sure, that's up there on the back. Yeah, Mest Comics has sponsored us for several shows now throughout the years. We're proud to call them friends. Mest Comics, if you check them out, is a locally created and conceived comic about a young sewer worker named Lilliput who serves as our tour guide on the wet, wild, and weird world that takes place beneath our feet in the sewers. Check them out at mestcomics.com. I think there's even some free comics you can download there, but you could buy some too. That'd be great. And thank you to Mest, and thank you also to Norse Media, the Northern Kentucky University student-run media organization, who is doing our live streaming tonight. Thanks to Norse footing the bill for the equipment rental tonight. The live stream becomes affordable, something we can do, and all you folks at home could thank them for that. And if you want to thank us for having them do that, then maybe you want to make a donation to True Theater. And how to do that is very simple. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad somebody's into that. The easy way to do that is to text the code TRUE13, TRUE13, to the number 44321. Of course, there's a place on our website you could go, truetheater.org/donate, but texting 44321, the code TRUE13, is the easiest way to do it. You get a link back and everything's self-explanatory. From there, that's TRUE13 to the code, to the number 44321, and I wouldn't prevent any of you, from donating if you want to, too. I know everybody comes at you at the end of the year. We'd like to come at you at the beginning of the year. So that's TRUE13 to 44321. All right, enough of that. Folks, we have a different theme for every show that we bring to you tonight, and it was inevitable we would eventually get to the theme of friends, because after all, we start every show, like we're starting tonight, by telling you or reminding you that everybody has a story to tell, and the only difference between strangers and friends is the sharing of that story. Tonight, you're going to make 5 new friends. The first of whom needs my glasses to tell you about him, is the son of 2 wonderful parents, the brother to 2 amazing sisters, the husband to 1 beautiful and strong wife, and the father of 3 crazy children, Francis, Lauren, and Elliot. He enjoys rock climbing, trail running, mycology, which I meant to look up before I got here, and anything else that gets him out in nature. When his nose isn't in a book, he's usually listening to the Grateful Dead or Billy Strings while cooking. Oh, great. He's also the Director of Finance and Administration at Dayton's NPR affiliate, WYSO. Please welcome Art Boulet.
So I'm sitting on this plane, and I have an overwhelming sense of excitement because I'm about to fly to London for the first time. As a lifelong Anglophile, this was a dream come true. I was flying to meet my wife, Liz. She had already been there for a couple days because she had the opportunity to work in London for a week. And that coincided shortly before our 10-year anniversary. So we decided that I would fly in later in the week. We'd extend the trip, spend some time in Italy, for a once-in-a-lifetime vacation. London has its pubs, Italy has its wine, which brings me to another emotion I'm feeling while I'm sitting on this plane, and that is of crippling anxiety. I'm having this feeling because at this point in my life, I'm just over 3 months sober. My journey towards sobriety was a hard, arduous journey for me personally, and it was equally destructive on my relationship with my wife, Liz. So this vacation was my first foray into a more uncontrolled environment than my normal day-to-day existence. And it was kind of a test. How's my sobriety going to go? How's my time with my wife going to go? Am I going to want to drink? Am I going to be able to continue to rebuild trust with Liz? Now, a little backstory before we take a trip to Europe together. I grew up in a very conservative Christian environment where we were taught that consuming alcohol, any amount of alcohol, was a sin. As I grew up, I found that my friends in high school, they were guided by a different set of guidelines when it came to alcohol. It was essentially shove as much alcohol down your throat as quickly as possible in order to get as inebriated as possible. It wasn't until graduate school where I saw a more responsible enjoyment of alcohol modeled by my friends and professors. And as much as I tried to adopt that model, it never really stuck. So on Valentine's Day, 2014, I walked into my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, which is way less romantic than it sounds. I got my 30-day chip, I got my sponsor, I got my 60-day chip, my 90-day chip, and then I walked into what would ultimately become my last meeting with my sponsor, Mike. Now, I asked Mike to be my sponsor because Mike was not afraid to tell you how it was. He was unashamed of the truth, and he didn't beat around the bush, and I love that about Mike. I love that about Mike to this day. I sat down, and Mike launched right into it. He said, this is going to be a different kind of meeting. I had only been in the program 90 days. I had no idea what that means. So Mike continues. He says, I'm not going to be your sponsor anymore because you're not going to be in this program anymore. Art, you're not an alcoholic. You're just being an asshole. My first thought was, so is there like an Assholes Anonymous that I can go to? But Mike was right. He wasn't just a sponsor, he was a friend, and he was able to see through the bullshit, call me on it, and ultimately put my life in a different direction. It would be 5 years after this conversation when I would finally have my last drink of alcohol. During those 5 years, I fluctuated between these periods of having a healthy relationship with alcohol and a not so healthy relationship with alcohol. That fluctuation was mirrored in my relationship with Liz. I would go through periods where I'd be rebuilding trust with Liz, and then periods where trust would once again be broken. It was this constant battle between being awesome and being that asshole. In April 2019, everything came to a head, and I decided that I was done with alcohol forever. Ish. I forgot that my wife and I were attending a friend's wedding at the beginning of May. And that friend was Babe. You heard that right. Her name is Babe, and she is just as awesome as you would expect somebody named Babe to actually be. My wife met Babe through work, and she became a friend to both of us. Babe is one of those people who can just make your day better by walking into the room, and she is a party waiting to happen. So Liz and I suffered no delusions that I was going to be able to go to Babe's wedding and not slam a couple back. So we made a plan. I was going to have 3 beers, and that was it. Not really sober, not really crazy, perfect. The wedding was incredible. We had an amazing time. Babe was Babe. She was just wearing white that day. She's always amazing. And on that day, May 4th, 2019, my third Trogs Brewing Company Perpetual IPA, for all you beer nerds out there, that beer was the last alcoholic beverage that has entered or will ever enter my body. And it feels really good to be able to say that out loud. Thank you. Part of dealing with alcohol abuse or alcoholism is doing a lot of work on yourself. It's being honest about who you are and not being afraid of it. I know myself well enough that just like the wallabies in Tanzania who recreationally feed on poppies to get a little buzz, or the bighorn sheep in the Canadian Rockies that seek out a very specific, highly narcotic form of lichen in order to have a little fun, I was also going to need some kind of intoxicant at moments in my life to get through this weird thing we call existence. I was having this conversation with my friend Tanner, and Tanner had an amazing suggestion. Tanner's one of my oldest friends, not in the sense that he's older than me, but we've been friends a long time. And he knows me better than just about anyone else on the planet. So Tanner suggests that I look into something called being California sober. I agree, it sounds so pretentious, and even though that's what I am, I don't say that for obvious reasons. So being Cali sober, it's weird how it gets more pretentious when you shorten it like that. Being Cali sober means that you don't consume alcohol or hard drugs, but you are allowed to consume entheogenic plants and fungi, things like cannabis, psilocybin mushrooms, peyote, ayahuasca. And that suggestion that Tanner made has completely changed my life for the better. I don't have any experience with psychedelics, which is a really weird thing for a huge Grateful Dead fan to say, but I did start consuming cannabis. I use cannabis intentionally 2 times a week. Once my kids fall asleep, I go into my garage and I have a 3x5 card where I wrote 9 centering questions. Questions like, how did you fail this past week, and how are you going to improve this next week? Questions like, when your children grow up, how do you want your adult children to remember their childhood? Instead of ignoring my problems and my issues and my reality with alcohol and then spiraling downward, I'm able to actually approach my reality and my issues and my problems and improve my life because of it. So with that in the backdrop, you can get a better understanding of why I'm on this plane. I'm feeling overwhelming excitement. I'm also feeling this crippling anxiety. And to be honest, I'm also a little bit nervous because I don't have any cannabis on me while I'm flying. As much as I would love to have flown internationally with a fat sack of the devil's lettuce, every scenario that I had going through my head to make that happen just ended up with me in some weird episode of Locked Up Abroad. So I just nipped that in the bud. I did get that honestly was not intended. That's amazing. So I get to London, I meet up with Liz, we have 2 incredible days in London, and then we fly to this village of Varenna, which is right on Lake Como. We spend our days exploring these Italian villages where we're the only people who know English. We hiked up to the top of the Griante Alps where they had this amazing chapel that they had built for the soldiers that used to patrol that alpine region. It's these sweeping vistas of the lake and the mountains surrounding Como. We got to swim in this beautiful glacially formed lake, and we spent our evenings sitting on this porch overlooking the lake with the Swiss Alps in the background while Liz had a glass of wine and I rolled a fat joint because I found a guy. Don't worry about it. That vacation was a singular moment for me. I think about it all the time. Liz and I hope to one day bring our kids back to that part of the planet and have those similar experiences. And I realized that all my anxiety and the tension that I had going into that vacation were unwarranted. We had such a great time. There is a moment during that vacation that sticks out more than anything else. And that is one of our last nights in Italy, my wife made reservations at this really small restaurant in the village of Varenna. It's one of these 4th or 5th generation restaurants that has maybe like 10 tables, so you have to book a month or weeks or months in advance. The food was the most amazing food I've ever had in my life. Not why I remember that meal. I remember that meal because I shared that meal with someone who, just like my friend Mike, told me how it was. I was looking into the face of someone who, just like Babe, can make my day better just by walking into the room. I was looking into the eyes of someone who, just like my friend Tanner, knows everything about me. And she still loves me. I had a moment of actualization. One of those moments where things that you thought were true become true for you. And that's that I wasn't sharing this meal. I was sharing this meal not just with my wife, with the mother of my children, but with my best friend.
One more time for Art. Art, if you ever create a newsletter, I would like to subscribe to it. Your next new friend you're going to meet tonight is born and raised here in Cincinnati. She's lived on the West Side for the past 30 years. West Side, best side. She lives with her husband, Joe, her son, Noah, and their cats. Professionally, she works as an addiction counselor and is currently a student working towards an independent license and mental health licensure. In her free time, she enjoys all types of music, horror movies, and true crime books and podcasts. A woman after my own heart, please welcome Melissa Gutter Jackson.
So when I was 20 years old, I got my first tattoo. 5 years later, I ended up getting my second tattoo. That was not planned, it just happened that way. But after I got my second tattoo at that 5-year mark, I remembered something one of my social work professors said about how we should change something about what we do every 5 years or so to prevent burnout. So that was the point when I decided, all right, every 5 years I'm gonna get a tattoo. And I'm gonna spend that 5 years really thinking about what am I going to get because this is gonna be a permanent mark on my body. My next tattoo will be in a couple of years when I'm 40. And I'm gonna have it on the inside of my wrist. And it's going to represent a friendship that I've had for a very long time, but that I've only really learned how to appreciate in the last 5 years or so. And that's my friendship with music. To say I had a happy childhood will be a stretch of the imagination. There were a lot of things that happened that have made me who I am. They're a part of my story, but I'm not going to get into it because that's not why we're here tonight. When I was 4, my parents got divorced, and my mom introduced me to the song "Don't Worry, Be Happy" by Bobby McFerrin. Oftentimes, she played this song as a way to kind of distract me and my siblings so that she could kind of get a handle on being a single mom that she was. And I have this picture that I've seen of me as this blonde little four-year-old child dancing around, hair in a ponytail, blue shorts on, dancing with a broom for whatever reason. I don't know what song is playing during this picture, but I imagine "Don't Worry, Be Happy" was probably one of them. But that was when my friendship with music really began. I remember locking myself in my room, dancing along to different types of music, but I didn't realize that I was using that music as my way to escape, as my way to find the friends in different musicians, in different songs, in different genres of music that understood me. Now, I had human friends, don't get me wrong. I also had animal friends, but that's another story too. But I had a hard time making those human friends, not because I was shy, which a lot of people would say that I was, but because I was scared. I was scared to tell these humans about everything that was going on with me, about all the traumatic events that I was experiencing. So I eventually learned how to open up to people with the use of alcohol. My best human friend, her name's Nikki, we met when we were 7 years old because my mom forced me to play with her. Nikki and I are pretty much the opposites of the same coin. Most people meet us and they're just like, how are you guys still friends? We've been friends for almost 31 years now. And Nikki was good at bringing me out of my shell with songs like Bitch by Meredith Brooks, or Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back. I know all the words, I will not sing it, sorry. Or also the weird songs like Dead Puppies by Barry Hansen. I encourage you to look it up, it's an interesting song. But that was when I learned how to use songs to build my connections with others. Because I could tell them songs that I liked, they could tell me songs that they liked, and that was our connection. Now, because of things happening on in my life, nighttime was not safe. It wasn't safe because that's sometimes when things happened, but it's also because at nighttime you're supposed to be asleep. Your brain is supposed to be shut off. My brain wasn't. And anybody who has ever had post-traumatic stress disorder understands what that's like. But I had music. Now, as a child, I had a very close relationship with my grandmother. And she worked in social services. She kind of knew some of the stuff going on at home. And I got to spend a lot of time at her house. I could always sleep at her house, no matter what. I had my favorite chairs that I could sleep in. I had my favorite blanket that I could sleep in. Sleep came easy there because it was safe. There was one night in particular that I was having a really hard time sleeping. I didn't have alcohol available to me because my grandmother wasn't much of a drinker, so it wasn't really in the house. I couldn't just turn on the TV because my grandmother didn't own one. So she told me to just go lay down, pick one of her mini books, read until I finally fell asleep. So, laying on her yellow shag carpeting, I remember watching the sun starting to come up. And this calmness came over me as I could almost hear the music in that sunrise telling me, it's okay, go to sleep. The sun is here, the light is here. So my grandmother liked to listen to a lot of different radio broadcasts where they talked about the meaning behind music. At some point, they talked about the songs by the Beatles. And one that was talked about was Here Comes the Sun. So hearing this radio program, I told my grandmother about my experience of not being able to sleep until the sun came up. And she commented on how, yeah, I love to take my daytime naps. I must have been a cat in a previous life. But that's when Here Comes the Sun became my favorite song, because the positivity in searching for the light, in searching for knowing that eventually it's going to be okay. And that's been my favorite song ever since. So it's real easy for me to say what's my favorite song. I don't hear it all the time. I don't listen to it all the time because I don't want to wear it out. But it's there. When I got pregnant with my son, I had a really hard time connecting to this child that I was growing inside of me. Not because I didn't want to be a mother, but because that was my fourth pregnancy. But the first one that was probably going to go to term, that I didn't lose yet. So I remembered a movie about a woman who had an unplanned pregnancy, who was also having a hard time connecting to her child. And she sang the song to her child, of Baby Don't You Cry by Quincy Coleman. At least that was the song that was in the movie. So while I was pregnant, I worked as a security guard at an alternative residential program. And on the weekends, the students love to have these gazebo parties, dance parties on the wooden gazebo. So it was my job as a security to go out there, monitor, make sure nothing weird was going on. And the students really loved rap music, which I have an appreciation for too. But a couple of them noticed that my son would kick in time to the bass. And they would play with it. And at first I was amused because, I'm finally feeling my baby kick, and because he wasn't a super active child. I was feeling my baby kick. I was feeling that physical connection. But then eventually I got annoyed with him because I'm not a plaything. Stop. He's kicking on other things than just my stomach. But that's when music became the friend that connected me and my unborn child. Even now, my son is now 13, lovely teenager. We have our fights. But even now, we use music as our way to connect to each other, where he tells me some of his favorite songs, like Yummy by Justin Bieber. Heard it way too many times. I know all the words. Again, I will not sing it. Or he's a big fan of Thriller by Michael Jackson. Or we like to sing along to Get Ugly by Jason Derulo. We also dance along to that in the car. We are car dancers. We love it. But music is our connection. That's how we tell each other what's going on with us, who we are. Even with my husband, he's a music video person, whereas I'm the actual music person. I'm the auditory learner, he's the visual learner, but it works because our tastes in music help us to know each other. When we got married, the song that we chose as our first dance was Wanted by Hunter Hayes. And one of the things that we both loved about that song was that it never says the word love. It just talks about being wanted and feeling wanted. And with my history with different romantic relationships, that was important, that this man that I was choosing to live my life with, that I had that connection to him as husband, as wife, as friends, as co-parents, and just as individuals. So I love to make mixed CDs. Sometimes I make them the old-fashioned way with actually burning them on my CD. Sometimes I make them other ways that I found through the internet. But those mixed CDs help me to show people who I am. If somebody's asking me how I'm feeling that day, I usually give them a song title of like, this is what I listened to on my way in. On my way here, I listened to the Fame soundtrack because that seemed fitting. You're all going to remember who I am. So my husband eventually decided to make me a mixed CD himself. And he didn't realize that all of the songs that he picked were songs that I had never heard before. Because he wasn't making it so that he was making something that I would like. He made it so that I could know him better. And we still make mixed CDs for each other. We still send each other in texts YouTube videos of songs, or just, hey, look at this song. Even his song to my son at our wedding was about a stepfather saying he didn't have to be. I believe Brad Paisley sings it. Wasn't a dry eye in the house when that song played and my son danced with him. So like I said at the beginning, my goal when I'm 40 years old is to get my next tattoo on my wrist, where it's hard to hide it. All the rest of my tattoos are on my back and on my feet, where I can kind of hide them because they're personal to me. They're very important. This one I want to be present so that people can see it and they can ask me about it. Now, I know that there's going to be some musical notes in there because it's about music and my friendship with that. But I also want boxing gloves because there's strength in music. There's strength in the connection that music can give between two people, between us and the world, because there's a natural music that is always happening. So I want people to see that tattoo and ask me about it so that we can build our connection with each other. Thank you.
One more time for Melissa. You should know that that is not what her tattoo is going to look like. So I hope you have a chance to see her in a couple of 3 years and check out how it does turn out. Folks, we're going to have one more storyteller before the intermission and then a couple more after. I want you to know that if you already haven't kind of found Ramona, who's handing out these interesting index cards with questions on them, do so. It'll give you a chance to interview a stranger, somebody you haven't met in the audience, ask them a question that's on the card, write down your name and email addresses, both of you, and maybe win some tickets in the second act. Ramona will explain the whole thing to you. It's easy, it's a lot of fun, and I know the extroverts will go running for those cards, and the introverts, you'll get to participate when the extroverts come seek you out. So I'm on the introvert side, by the way, so I love that we do this, but I'd be the one people coming to me. So we have 2 more shows, by the way, this coming season you should know about. In April, on the 27th, True Home is going to be our spring show, and we'll finish the year July 27th with True Gift. And we'll give you some information later in the second act about how you could submit stories if you think you might have one that fits one of those themes. And, of course, tickets are already on sale. And one more time, I find it important to mention that we also take donations. Just by texting truth13, I'm going to mention it, Ramona. Our board president texted me backstage, don't forget to mention we're a nonprofit. Yes, we're a nonprofit, which means that your donations may be tax deductible, but also more importantly, it means we need them because we don't make a lot of money at this. So yeah, donations are great and we love you for them, and some people have donated already. Thank you very much. Those of you at home who have, those of you at home who haven't, it's trueFRIEND. You can text to the number 44321. Really appreciate it. Every little bit helps, honestly. A lot, whatever. We're just very grateful to you for it. All right, our next storyteller. He runs the Not Your Average Paint and Sip class at the Pendleton Arts Center. I've taken the class once with my wife. We had a great time. It takes up most of his time, however, but he says that he is the perfect example of the phrase, find something you love to do, and you'll never have to work a day in your life. When it comes to friends, he says no one can top his 4.25 Chihuahua as his bestie, but he has a handful of great humans that definitely gives his Chihuahua a run for its money, one of which you're going to hear a lot more about tonight. Please welcome James Reynolds.
So it's my senior year of high school, and I get a knock at my bedroom door. It's Brooke Handley. We've known each other for several hot minutes. Most of our educational career has been spent with each other, and she has questions. She wants to know, do I know where the party is tonight? I do. She wants to know if I know there are people there that want to see me. I do. She wants to know if I'm going to leave my bedroom to come to the party that is being hosted at my house. I have no desire. At this point, Lebanon, Ohio, year 2000, all I know is these are not my people. I haven't figured out why yet. that wasn't really the place for someone to navigate their sexuality in a fun and happy way. If you've never been to Lebanon, if they ever did a gay pride, there would be more protesters than queer people. Let's put it that way. But one hell of a Christmas parade in December. So I make it out, or I keep it in, however you want to think of it. And I end up going to college. I have not learned a thing. I go to Morehead State University. It is a bustling metropolis full of progressive individuals, and that is a lie. It is, if you've ever been there, it is absolutely beautiful. High recommend, but it is very similar to Lebanon. And I double down on my decision making, and I join a social fraternity. Oh, yes. That's how I felt. So as one does when they're in a fraternity, I end up at a party, and I'm seeing all these people doing the things. Basically, it's like I'm walking through a sitcom, and I'm like, y'all, this is so unbelievable. Like, what is happening? You are not my people. I don't know what's going on here. So as a young person with probably social anxiety does, I adopt this very stealthy maneuver, and I pretend I'm just looking for something. That way, people maybe think that I'm busy, but I don't want to talk to any of them, and it gets me out of that part. This leads me outside of the party. Like I said, we're in the country. There are no lights out here. It's far less people-y, so it feels good. I don't have a bedroom to hide in, so this is about as close as I can get. I see this girl, who I will come to know as Carla, sitting at a picnic table. I don't know it yet, but Carla is going to be the reason that I understand what friends do feel like. She has all the sass of a 22-year-old that just came back from spending a few years in Chicago and is looking down on every single person at this party. Nevertheless, something just attracts me to her. So I dig deep in my toolbox, which is empty, and I pull out the one thing I've got, which is, do you have a light? Thankfully, Carla's standards are low enough at this point that this gets me in the door. She gives me a look. Because we're both in college, we understand science. She's holding something that's been lit on fire and there's no one else around. And I've learned later that what she's doing is sizing me up. Is this another frat boy just trying to insert parts of him into my timeline? Or like, what's happening here? And we just hit it off. And really, we haven't even stopped hitting it off to this day. But for the rest of our college career, we were like an enigma. We did all the things that couples would do, except for live in married housing, because that was too much. But we had all the fun. We went to all the parties, did all the functions, the formals, the everything together. But because we were friends, it was all the good stuff and none of the drama, because we weren't sleeping together, much less caring about any of the other details. We get to the end of college, and we both go our next journey step. Carla goes to Lexington, and I go back home to Cincinnati. Keep in touch. It's close enough we can still be regularly irresponsible together. And I get a Mayday call. Carla needs me, my body, in Lexington because she's just at this point with this breakup. She's in a new apartment. She just needs an injection of the old us, that energy, that happiness. So I oblige, of course, because we're about to be single and we're going to own Lexington, Kentucky for a night. So I put on, back in the day, this was like a big splurge, my diesel jeans. They were from Italy. I don't care what you say. And I go down. We have a nice dinner. We share a bottle of wine. Everything is going perfectly. We're talking just enough about the bad stuff, but more laughing and talking about what good times we're going to have. We don't really know what we're going to do next because it's kind of too early to be like the party rock star style. No DJs have started anywhere, so we're just going to let the world take us. We get to my car, which I need to tell you, was the first brand new car I've ever purchased. It was a stick shift, and it was a very small Kia. Keep it back here. Once we get in the car, I'm like, Carla, I had a little flop moment in my belly. There's definitely going to be a number 2 coming. And we're at about we're at a 2. Like it's there, but it's not a problem. It's just a discussion at this point. Carla is like, she lives there, but she doesn't live downtown. So she's like, that same confident girl from Chicago. She's that savvy. And she's like, yeah, sweet, gas station, I got you. So we get to the gas station. I'm like, dang, this is awesome. This is the way the world should work out. Pull in. It is not open. So now I'm like, we're like 4.5, 5 out of 10 at this point in the guts. And I'm like, what is the next step? Carla thinks that she has something. So I'm like, cool. This is still joyful. We start driving, and if you've never been to Lexington, it very quickly gets into neighborhoods that are just clear old money. Big houses, big bushes. And Carla, being Carla, is just telling me, like, chill out. You can go behind these people's bushes. Like, you like camping. And we got to a point where I kind of thought about it. So internal monitor, I'm like, ooh, we're 6 out of 10ing. And Carla, there's not even a business, like not even one. I don't feel like we are going towards somewhere that will be my salvation. So we're like, sweet. We're gonna head back to the gas station. What does that mean, you ask? That means I am choosing the dumpster. Because I'm classy, as my Italian genes suggest. And we talk it through. I'm confident, like, whatever. It's just gonna be a little blip on our owning Lexington. We pull into the gas station. I'm at a 9.5. And I'm doing that thing. If you've ever held it too long, your body starts to stiffen up, right? Like, every limb is experiencing rigor mortis. And if you've never driven a stick shift, the wheel, the shifter, the clutch, the gas, and the brake. There is nowhere for you to go but where you have to be when you're driving a stick shift. Carla doesn't know how to drive one. Pull into this gas station, ready to just be the guy I am, because I'm not above it. I just need to get my head wrapped around it. And my body's like, we're done. So here I am. The only thing holding me up is my shoulder blades on the back of my little Kia seat. This was back when they were just starting, so they were flimsy, okay? And imagine a baby diaper when it has the quintessential explosion moment. You question science, it's that moment. Except for I'm the size of a lot of babies and I do not have a diaper. Again, the Kia is small. The Kia is a stick shift, and I am not gonna sit down. So we do what two friends should in this scenario. Windows go down, of course. Music goes up. And we just do what we gotta do. Carla spends half of her time out the window just breathing and laughing. And the other half of her time out the window telling the people at the stoplights what's going on in the car. So we're getting close back to her new apartment, which I haven't even seen yet. And we know there's some damage control that needs to happen. Thankfully, we are of a certain age. We grew up in the 80s, and we have this fashionista trick up our sleeves, the tight-rolled jean. This is how we're going to beat gravity, right? So a few things become very much apparent when we get to Carla's. One, my brand new car, resale value is trash. 2, Lexington is never going to see the power of my Italian pants. 3, Carla's bathroom is about to also be trashed. And 4, I have an operating definition now for what a friend is. So in the end, and this holds true across the board, I can say, I've done some inventorying. Not only do I know I can shit my pants in front of all of my friends, it's actually going to upgrade everything about our friendship.
One more time for James. Yeah. I feel compelled to mention that if you were at our last show, at True Luck, you may have noticed we had a shit story there too. I assure you we do not go out in search of these. They just find their way to us. We're going to take a 15-minute intermission. 2 more storytellers coming up. Find Ramona with the index cards out around the bar. Get a drink if you like. Make a donation, and we'll see you back in 15 or 20. Thank you. Once again, Preston Bell Charles III. Preston is many things. In addition, among them, he is a music teacher of the violin, and he has just started doing that at the Wyoming Fine Arts Center. If you have a child, or maybe if you yourself want to learn to play like that, you wanted to go check him out at the Wyoming Fine Arts Center. He's also the music director of the Cincinnati Hip Hop Orchestra, which he founded during COVID. Yeah. He's played all over the world. He works for his father at the Preston Charles Funeral Home. He's the proud father of 2 daughters and a son. He's a dedicated advocate for those affected disproportionately by the war on drugs, bringing awareness to the lack of attention given to mental health issues as part of his effort. One of the ways he does that is he just won his 2nd ArtsWave Black and Brown Artists Grant, and he's going to be putting that, to great use. So keep an eye on his website, makeithappenmusic.com, for what he does with that. You'll be very impressed, and what he did with his last one, which is also very impressive. Preston Bell Charles III. Before we get going again, I just wanted to remind you that we have 2 shows coming up for the rest of our 13th season. And if you're interested in submitting a story idea for us to consider for one of those, you can reach out to us through our website at truetheater.org. What do we got up here? truetheater.org. There's a submit your story page. There's also this phone number here. Don't do that. I can't hear people's email addresses when they leave a message. It's just like it's a whole thing. Forget the phone number. Do go to our website at truetheater.org. Just remember, we spell theater the fancy way, ending in R-E. That becomes important when you want to sign up on our mailing list or follow us at one of our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram. It's sort of phasing out our use of Twitter, but Instagram and Facebook has been, not for any reason, just because Instagram and Facebook seems to be where it's at for us. So remember, follow us at truetheater. We're all over the place as that. Also, sort of independent of True Theater, myself and my friend Dave Steffen are hosting a storytelling workshop in the month of February. If you're interested in that, there'll be details on our website soon, but you can also go to that website if you could remember it, or if you're at home, you're writing it down. It's all virtual. It's 4 Thursdays in February, and an extra bonus day for one-on-one attention with everybody. And if you get that registration in before February 2nd, I think it's $50 off. So go check that out. It'll be a lot of fun to work with some of you who have this burning story inside you that you want to figure out how to tell, and we'll help you tell it. So go check that out. I didn't put this in my script for tonight, but since the theme is friends after all, it was 1993 or 1994 when I first got here. I got here in 92, so I was still fresh, and I was looking for the theater scene, how to get involved. A friend of mine at work said, there's this play in rehearsal. It's an adaptation of Frankenstein, and I have the number of the stage manager. Why don't you give her a call and see if you can get involved? So I did, and I called this woman, and she said, well, come on down, and we'll, see what you're about. And yes, I did, and she introduced me to everybody there, basically became the seed from which my tree of friends for the next several decades grew. It's thanks to her that I feel rooted in Cincinnati, and not indirectly, you could almost thank her for the mere existence of True Theater. A few years ago, she even came to me and said, how come you've never asked me to help with True Theater? And I said, well, it's because I'm terrible at delegating. But why don't you come on down and see how you could, help? And she showed up, and she just started helping. Now, to the point where I can't even imagine what would happen if she wasn't with us anymore. She's our production manager, and I hope she's already taken off her headset in anticipation of what I'm about to do. But Annette Ucci, please come out here and accept a round of applause. No, she's taking off her headset now. Get out here, Annette. Yes. It's the unsung hero of True Theater. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now I have to give her time to get back on the headset so we can continue our show. But yeah, it's really amazing. So knowing that I'm a terrible delegator, if anybody here is interested in helping out in True Theater, if you can see your problem, say, I could tackle that, just come meet me and then do those things, and they'll be so much appreciated. We're always looking for people. Annette is just been so great. Thank you again, Annette Ucci. All right, moving on to, our next storyteller is also a very long time friend of mine. I've known him almost as long as I've known Annette, actually. He is proud to become a member of True Theater's Three Timers Club tonight, a very exclusive club. He's been an actor and a director for the last 30 years, but the last few years have been difficult because of his recent battle with esophageal cancer, which, as a longtime friend of his, I can tell you I am proud and impressed at the way he kicked cancer's ass, and now he is cancer-free. Yeah. So I'm super excited to introduce him tonight. Please welcome Paul Morris.
It's the fall of 2010. and I'm standing in the New York Comic Con, staring at a near-mint copy of The Walking Dead #1. Now, the popular zombie apocalypse TV show wouldn't premiere for another couple of weeks. But already, the costs for those early issues were on the rise, and I needed #1 to complete my collection. But the dealer was asking $350 for it, and that was still a bit too rich for my blood. So I asked him, do you give any dealer discounts because I work at the Comic Depot upstate in Saratoga Springs? And he asked me, you know Darren Carrera? Yeah, he's a friend of mine. Well, we've been talking online and I was hoping to meet him. I said, well, I'll go get him. And with that, I went to go find my friend Darren in the hopes that I would get that dealer discount. Now, I met Darren after I had moved to upstate New York. Now, I'm from here originally, but when I got married, my wife took a job up in Baltimore, so we moved up there. Not too long after that, I was in New York City rehearsing a play when 9/11 happened. After coming back from witnessing that event, it had me rethinking city life. And even though Baltimore isn't like New York City, I wanted out. So the next summer, me and my wife went to visit her family in upstate New York in Northville. And Northville is it's a beautiful place, and we found a house on the lake there. It sits in the lower tier of the Adirondacks. And I felt that this place, I could finally feel safe. So we moved there 6 weeks later. Now, I'd been a comic book collector ever since I was a kid. And one of the things about collecting comic books that it's more than just about going to a store and browsing and buying comics. It's about just hanging out, meeting people, talking about comic books. Unfortunately, there wasn't a comic book store nearby me, so I knew that I needed to go find one, because if I did that, then I might find other people of like mind, and that maybe I could meet some new friends. So for the next couple of years, I ventured out into the community to find a shop that would suit me, and I couldn't find any. And then one day I did. It was only 35 miles away. The Comic Depot, and even better, the owner, Mr. Darren Carrera. Darren had this rugged, good look about him. He had long black hair and a ponytail. He was 15 years my junior. He had a house, a wife, and 2 kids. And he had what I considered, he had everything. And he had this smile that would just light up the room, and people would just naturally drift toward him. So we hit it off immediately. I would learn that this was nothing new or special about Darren, because he was like this with everybody that he met. It's why he was so successful. After a while, he invited me over to his house, and we started hanging out outside of the shop. And that's when our friendship really began to grow. About this time, he decided to start to expand and grow his business. And one of the ways he was going to do this was taking some of his comics to these comic book conventions and selling them there. So he asked me if I'd like to work with him, and I jumped all over that. We spent many hours on the road, in restaurants and hotels and on the convention floors, and we had a blast setting up and taking down the shows. We enjoyed meeting their customers and befriending the other dealers. And then, I figured I would hit some of this because this story's kind of hard. After a while, as our friendship continued to grow, my marriage crumbled, due in part to my post-traumatic stress that was unresolved in my childhood abuse. Through the worst of this, Darren stood by my side. He would sometimes just sit there quietly and listen to me talk. He knew I didn't need anything, that he didn't have to try to fix it or make it better. I just needed an ear or a hug. Finally, in the summer of 2010, my wife and I split up when she took a job in Cleveland, and I returned here to Cincinnati to be with the people who had my back. Later on, early fall, Darren invited me, he insisted that I come back and be his +1 at the Diamond Breakfast that was at the beginning of the 4-day New York Comic Con event. Diamond is the distributor of comics, and at this event, they gave us a swag bag full of stuff. Now it's the last day of the convention and the last hour, and I found that elusive Walking Dead #1, and I was in search of Darren to get that dealer discount. So I found it, and I quickly told him about my incredible find and that the guy wanted to meet him, so we hustled on back. And naturally, they hit it off immediately. And after a while, I thought the guy was a pretty nice guy. And then Darren says, so what about that Walking Dead up there? And the guy says, well, if we're going to be talking about that, I'd better put on my other hat. Darren and I looked at each other, realizing that we were dealing with a bit of a douchebag here. So I asked the guy, do you take anything on trade? He said, no. Why? What do you got? I smiled and said, I have 2 Obama Amazing Spider-Man, number 583. Now, for those of you who do not know, and I mean, why would you? When Obama took office in 2009, Marvel, very last minute, created a variant cover with him on it. And Darren had gotten me one of those issues when it was released. And now that book was commanding a price of $80 to $100. And, as luck would have it, in that free swag bag we got at the Diamond Breakfast, inside of it were things like a Star Trek battery-operated Tribble. There was also an Obama variant inside there. Now, it wasn't bagged and boarded like my copy was, but, it would do. And now I had 2 to bargain with. So I took them out, and I laid them out on the counter, and the dealer's looking at it, and quickly he goes, that one there with the bent spine, that one there, is that the one you got at the Diamond Breakfast? Well, the guy might have been a douchebag, but he certainly did know his stuff. So he's standing there, and he's looking at it, and I could see the wheels turning because he's trying to figure out, how much to charge me for this trade. When out of the blue, another Obama variant landed right on top of the pile. It startled me and the dealer, and I looked over to Darren. He's just standing there smiling. He had taken his free copy and threw it on the pile to sweeten up the deal. Now, that wasn't what I had in mind for the dealer discount, but, now there's 3 of them. And the dealer, he's standing there and he's like, oh, God, and finally he's like, I can't believe that I'm about to trade 3 Obama variants for the Walking Dead #1. And I went, yes! He quickly added, hey, can you throw in $20? I said, sure! God, I was just so excited that I got this comic book so incredibly cheap. It was the best trade ever. Later, as we're riding Amtrak back up to Saratoga, we're talking about the fabulous weekend we just had and about me finally finishing collecting The Walking Dead. Darren was as genuinely excited about it as I was. And that, for me, was the cherry on top of our friendship. Because that selfless act that he did to give me was just selfless, and he didn't even have to think about it. And sure, he could have taken that comic book and made some money for it, but that wasn't what was important to him. What was important was our friendship and that he could help. A few years later, Darren and his wife split up. And I wish that I could have been there for him like he was for me. Because, well, there's only so much someone can do over a phone. Two days after Thanksgiving in 2016, I received a voicemail from a mutual friend of ours that I would not have expected to call me. He simply said, "I need to talk to you." He sounded really strange, and I didn't like the sound of that. By this point, you may have figured out, since I've been using Darren in the past tense, he had died. At this point, he had started dating someone else, and his ex-wife was doing the same. And on Thanksgiving, they all came together and had dinner with the kids. And I'm told it was a great time. And for that, I'm really thankful for his family. I returned for his memorial, and it was widely attended by not only the business sector of Saratoga that he left a big hole in, but also his many friends and family. Like many of us here, I've already lost quite a few friends and family through the years. People who I love and I miss very much. And even though I have friends around me now that have my back, people like David Levy, the loss of Darren still hits me in the gut to this day, because he was my solid go-to in one of the worst times of my life when I really needed a friend. As he would often say to me, "I love you, man." One more time for Paul. Thank you, Paul. As an introvert, it didn't dawn on me that we might conceivably run out of these cards that Ramona was handing out during intermission, because why would anybody want to go and walk up to a stranger and just start talking to them? But I should have known that as an extrovert, Ramona would be pressing these into people's hands. She was, in fact, doing her job. So thank you, everybody, for participating. I hope you made some friends tonight. I don't think we collected all the cards, so those of you who didn't turn them in, I hope you still had fun participating. But I'm going to randomly choose 5 right now and read a little bit out loud. I hope it's not too embarrassing. And the peoples who I read, if the person who asked the question, the person who answered the question's email address is on here, you're going to get tickets to the next show. So that's pretty cool, right? All right. So Susie asked Jane,
what is the time that you came in first? And, oh, I'm sorry, Jane said never. She came in second to last in a Bunker Hill road race, though, so I'm sure they had a great conversation about that. Congratulations, you two. Thank you. Your tickets are going to be right here. Your name will be added to the comp list for the next show, but the tickets themselves will come to your email address like a couple days before the show, everybody. Okay, number 2. Pam asked Mary Rose? Yes. She asked her, what is your favorite hobby, or what hobby would you like to try? Mission work and woodworking. So great, mission work, connecting you to people, woodworking, possibly something that is for you, internal, do it by yourself. I love that. And I'm sure she shared a lot of details about that. So thank you two. All right. It looks like Michael asked Krista, share a story about your best childhood friend. So she said, my best childhood friend was an imaginary giraffe named Giraffey. I love it. That's great. Thank you, you two. All right. Yeah. All right, 2 more. Lynette asked Rika, what is your dream job? A marine ecologist. Very cool. I wonder if she's doing that right now, or if she's going to be doing that in the future. I'd like to know more about that. And finally, Maggie asked Khalil, what is your favorite song, music, and why? Song or / music, and why? We didn't have enough room to add all the details of his story, but he likes the song All of Me. I love that song too. By the way, I also love that movie. Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin. Thank you all for playing, and thank you all the rest of you. I'm going to read these personally later. It's a good time, and I'm really glad you all get to meet your fellow audience members. I think that's one of the lovely things that comes as being a part of the live audience here. Those of you who are watching from home who may be able to make it out in the future, this is the kind of fun we have when you come on down to Memorial Hall. So, I hope you could join us again in the future. Now on with the rest of our show. Our final new friend that you're going to make tonight was raised on the mean streets of Middletown, Ohio, and now resides in bucolic Fort Wright, Kentucky. Adjectives, his. He currently is going on his 18th year with Cincinnati Public Radio, currently as their marketing manager, yeah? Love that, the stations under Cincinnati Public. He also volunteers around town, having helped start the Commonwealth Artist Student Theater and house managing at such places like the No Theater and Cincinnati Shakespeare, and loves serving as an ambassador for the Life Center Organ Donor Network. Not related to storyteller number 3 tonight, please give it up for Kevin Reynolds.
So there's a popular meme out there that says, good friends will bail you out of jail, best friends will help you bury the body. I'm here to tell you what my true friend, Susie Skidmore, did for me. And you heard I work for Cincinnati Public Radio. That means I'm a good friend with Ira Glass. So if you're a fan of This American Life, you may recognize my story structure. Act 1. The JCs. Back before there were young professional groups affiliated with all the nonprofits in town, there was the Greater Cincinnati JCs, a leadership development community service organization for folks 21 to 40. I'd been a member on and off for a bunch of years. I was back in town, back in the chapter, and sometime in the mid-90s or so, Susie joined our chapter. As we were doing our JC activities, things like we used to make breakfast for the families at Ronald McDonald House. We did an Easter egg hunt for the kids on the West End. More beer booths than I can count. Susie and I and 4 others became really close friends. We dubbed ourselves the big dogs because you either run with the big dogs or you stay on the porch. Outside of the JCs, we were together all the time. Movies, plays, dinners, bars. We became groupies for the Menus, the local party band, and followed them around. Yeah. And 5 of us even took a cruise to the Bahamas together. Now, I want to make this clear. Susie and I have always had a platonic relationship, but it was going to intensify as the years progressed. Act 2, the big C. So in 1997, I had an incident that I thought was a kidney stone attack. And if you've ever had one, I feel badly for you. I kind of thought it was that because my dad had them, so I knew what to expect. I went to my doctor, and he ran some tests, and he said, well, what you've got is called polycystic kidney disease. And that means what it says. I had a lot of cysts growing on both of my kidneys. So he referred me to a kidney doctor, and I became an A-plus patient. I was following all the rules. I gave up caffeine. I was monitoring my blood pressure and doing labs every 6 months. But as the years progressed, I started having more and more of these attacks. And at the end of 2006, I had one that was so bad, I wound up in the hospital, and they did an MRI. And that night, a doctor I didn't know came in and was talking to my wife at the time and I and said, there's definitely some masses on your kidneys, which I kind of already knew. But we want you to see this special urologist. All right. So a couple days later, we go and we're ushered into a consultation room and not an exam room. And he's got the images from my MRI up on the screen. And he said, you have, especially on your left side, huge masses. It was about 3 times the size it was supposed to be. He said, unfortunately, growing along with all those cysts, cancer has been growing for a very long time as well. Now, you've probably heard stories from people when you're told you have cancer, it's sort of an out-of-body experience, like your mind just starts in overdrive. But we held it together enough to say, all right, so what does that mean? Radiation, chemotherapy? And he said, unfortunately, no. Renal cell carcinoma doesn't respond to those treatments. We have to do it surgically. I'm going to have to take out both of your kidneys and your adrenal glands and all the surrounding cancer to try to give you what we call a clean margin. Reeling continues, but the wherewithal to ask what I thought was a pretty appropriate question, how do I live without any kidneys? And he said, well, once I take the second one out, you'll start dialysis. And you will have to stay on dialysis for a minimum of 5 years because transplant centers will not put a beautiful organ into a cancered body until you can prove for 5 years that you're cancer-free. So, what do you do with that kind of information? Mind just begins to reel. But we finally pulled it together and started looking at our options. Found out that we were able to do dialysis at home, which is like a second job. So I was doing 5 treatments a week, 4 hours at a time, plus all of the supplies that go with it. But it allowed me to pick which 5 times I was going to do it. It allowed me to, I believe, stay healthier than I would have had I gone into a traditional center because I was getting more dialysis. And it allowed me to keep working thanks to, quite frankly, some very understanding bosses at Cincinnati Public Radio. Act 3, Susie to the rescue. So I'm going through all of my dialysis, and before we started dialysis, actually, my wife and I at the time did, I think, the most logical thing you can do when you're faced with that kind of diagnosis and what's about to happen to your life. We threw a big party. We called it Not Kidneying Around. Because I wasn't. This had become very real, and I was petrified. And all I wanted to do before it started was to see as many of my friends as possible, because I had no idea what was coming next. I had the technical terminology for it all, but I didn't really know how it was all going to play out. So we took over the upstairs at O'Brien's in O'Brienville, and there was much celebrating and drinking. At one point in the evening, Susie pulled me aside and she said, all right, explain to me exactly what's going to happen. So I told her what I told you. Surgery, dialysis, 5 years, transplant. She paused and she looked at me. She goes, all right, I'll be your donor. Truthfully, some other folks during the course of the party, alcohol related or not, had made the same sort of offer. I'll get tested for you. I'll be your donor. And I said, Susie, thank you. I love you, but that's 5 years away. I have no idea what the next 2 weeks are going to look like. And I have no idea what dialysis for 5 years is going to look like. So I went off and I had the surgeries. And as I started to say, my wife and I were able to do home hemodialysis. So I was able to see Susie and other friends on occasion. And when I was seeing Susie, I was like noticing that she had lost some weight. And I was like, hey, Suze, what's up with that? She had done some research. I don't recommend medical research online, but she did it anyway. She'd done some research and discovered that at the time, her body mass index would have disqualified her to be a kidney donor. So she went out and she joined Jenny Craig. And in a little over a year, she lost over 100 pounds. She was written up in Huffington Post. She joined a gym. She was getting healthy. As a matter of fact, she had raised money for a mission trip with her church to South Africa. She had to go get the immunizations from her doctor. And so now I take you to my own little mental, how I think this might have gone. Susie's in the office. She asks, will any of these immunizations hurt my kidneys? The doctor, now rightfully befuddled, what's going on with your kidneys? Susie, I'm going to donate one to my friend Kevin. Doctor, I hadn't heard anything about this. When does this happen? I don't know, like 3.5, 4 years? In my mind, the doctor was like, gave her the immunizations, sent her to South Africa. But all of that is a very long-winded way of saying she had more faith that this was going to happen, that this was meant to happen, than I could have mustered in a lifetime. Act 4, let's do this. So I'm going along my merry way doing dialysis, and life was what it was, and Susie and I were in touch quite a bit, and at every conversation, not every, all right, exaggerating, a lot of the conversations she would say, all right, I'm ready, can we get tested? Can I start testing? And I'm like, I want you to. The transplant center said that due to the extent of my cancer, they were going to demand a full 5 years clean. When I hit 4.5 years clean, they did throw us a bone. They said, look, if you have anybody that you would like to have tested, we can start that process now. We'll go on the assumption that you'll be clean in 5 years, and then you'll be able to schedule the transplant quicker, because this does take a while. So I had 3 people test for me. And if you ever want to be humbled by the goodness of people, you find out that at least 3 people went on their own time to a hospital for testing to see if they would be allowed to undergo major surgery and sacrifice a body part. It was a little overwhelming. I only know that those 3 people tested because they told me. They keep a very distinct line between potential recipient and potential donor. I'm not allowed to know anything that's going on. And I didn't, other than that those 3 people had started the process. So I was waiting until January of 2012. And I get a call at work from Susie. And I vaguely think it went something like, I've been approved, do you want my kidney? This is a different sort of out-of-body experience. This was like this flood of emotion that this whole journey might actually come to an end, that maybe there is actually a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm like, if you want to, I'm ready. And she said, all right, let's do this. So we began the testing process. They test you physically, mentally, and emotionally. They want to make sure both parties can handle all that's about to happen with the transplant and any emotions and all of that. And Susie had the benefit at every test of being asked an additional 3 questions. Are you here of your own free will? Are you being paid? Are you being coerced? And she's like, I'm just trying to help Kevin. And then a lot of times then she would call me and she goes, can you please tell them to stop asking me those questions? I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can do that. I'm pretty damn sure they're going to ask you that right up until the surgery. And they did. And they did. We were given a date in May of 2012 for the transplant. And I'm like, I'm getting rid of this machine. I'm not going to be tethered anymore. I was ecstatic. Susie less so. She contacted the transplant team and said, look, we passed all the tests. He's been on this machine too long. Can't you do something to move this thing sooner? And they're like, all right. So they contacted the surgeons. 2 surgeons were willing to shuffle their schedule around. We wind up with a date of April 19th, 2012. That morning, Susie's family and my family roll into the parking garage at Christ Hospital at the same time. And all I kind of remember was putting my arm around her and saying, all right, look, this is really real now. Like, we're here. And if you don't want to do this, if this is too big, I totally get it. And it won't change anything between us. And I may make some of this up, but I kind of remember just getting a little nudge from her. And she said, let's do this. Act 5, today. As I stand before you now, I am the proud owner of Susie's spare kidney for almost 11 years. It is a wonderful kidney. It is such a wonderful kidney that it started producing urine before the surgeon had it fully installed, which I was told was a very good sign. There's been no problems. My lab work is great. My doctors are happy. I am untethered and can do what I want. But this did bring a dilemma that I hadn't quite anticipated. Susie's birthday was coming up. What do you give the person who gave you your life back? Now, the first birthday was easy. I got a bunch of kidney stuff, like sweatshirt, I donated a kidney, and kidney-shaped earrings. And it was all cute and adorable and whatever, but didn't have legs. Like that wasn't, I couldn't cut that from any more holidays. And, Applebee's gift card seemed pretty inadequate too when you stop and think about it. So I asked her, I said, Susie, I don't know what to do. What can I get you? How can I repay you for this? And in typical Susie fashion, she said, the best gift is that you just live a full, happy, healthy life. You ever tried to wrap a full, happy, healthy life? But what we do now is we just try to find time to hang out together. We go to brunch at Taste of Belgium because the McWaffle is awesome. We've gone to a couple of Broadway shows. We did a kidney walk together. I think she likes, checking in, making sure her old part's doing okay and that I'm watching my P's and Q's. I like seeing her as another way of thanking her and showing her that, yeah, I am. I'm living my fullest, happiest, healthiest life. So this is breaking the wall a little bit, but Susie is here tonight, and I would like to ask all of you to help me make a very public, and man, I'm hoping a really embarrassing, thank you to my friend and my donor, Susie Skidmore.
And one more time for Kevin. And Susie. Folks, that's our show. Let's hear it again for all our storytellers. Art, Melissa, Paul, James, Kevin, Preston, Memorial Hall, Norse Media, Mest Comics, all these people you see up here, it really takes a village. We hope to see you back here April 27th for True Home, and until then, be true. Good night.